Most people think they are living their life, but very few ever stop to ask a simple question. Are they actually conscious while living it? Every morning begins the same way, every day follows a familiar pattern, and every night ends with the same tired feeling. Life keeps moving forward, but something inside feels stuck. This is not laziness, and it is not failure. It is something far more common and far more dangerous. It is living on autopilot. A state where your body moves, your mind reacts, and your life passes by without you ever fully being present inside it. And the most frightening part is that most people will never realize it is happening. Most people believe they are living their own lives, making their own choices, and moving in the direction they want. But if you look closely, you will realize that most lives follow the same pattern, the same timeline, the same expectations. Wake up, rush through the morning, work all day, return home exhausted, distract yourself for a few hours, sleep, and repeat. Days blur into weeks, weeks into years. Life feels fast, yet empty. This is what living on autopilot looks like, when life keeps moving, but awareness stays behind. Autopilot begins very early. Long before you understand who you are taught who you should become. You are rewarded for following instructions, not for understanding yourself. You learn to raise your hand, wait for permission, and trust authority. Over time, this teaches your mind a dangerous lesson, that thinking deeply is risky, and following the path already laid out is safe. Slowly, your inner voice becomes quieter, replaced by expectations, rules, and routines you never chose consciously. As adulthood begins, autopilot becomes stronger. Responsibilities increase, time feels limited, and survival becomes the priority. Dreams are postponed for later. Curiosity is replaced by practicality. You tell yourself you will think about your life once things settle down, but they never do. Instead of questioning direction, you focus on speed. Instead of asking where you are going, you worry about falling behind. Autopilot convinces you that movement equals progress, even when you are moving in circles. One of the biggest reasons autopilot dominates modern life is mental overload. Your mind is constantly under attack. Notifications, emails, news, entertainment, social media, all fighting for your attention. When your brain is overwhelmed, it chooses the easiest path. Habits take over. Automatic responses replace conscious decisions. You stop living intentionally and start reacting to whatever appears next. In this state, deep thinking feels exhausting, and distraction feels like relief. Fear also plays a silent role. Fear of being judged. Fear of being different. Fear of making the wrong choice. Autopilot protects you from these fears by keeping you inside familiar patterns. When you don't choose consciously, you don't feel fully responsible. You can blame circumstances, society, or luck. Autopilot feels safe because it removes accountability. But that safety comes at the cost of meaning. Living on autopilot slowly disconnects you from yourself. You forget what excites you. You forget what makes you feel alive. You stop listening to your instincts and start trusting external validation instead. Your worth becomes measured by productivity, income, or approval. You become efficient, but not fulfilled. Busy, but not present. Successful on paper, but empty inside. This is why so many people feel lost even when their lives look normal. Another dangerous aspect of autopilot is time blindness. When you live unconsciously, you underestimate how quickly life passes. You assume there will always be more time to start over, to change, to live differently. But autopilot steals years quietly. One day you realize that a decade has passed, and nothing truly changed inside you. This realization often arrives too late, accompanied by regret instead of opportunity. Society normalizes autopilot by calling it adulthood. Exhaustion is expected. Dissatisfaction is joked about. Deep questions are avoided. Anyone who slows down to reflect is told they are overthinking. Anyone who chooses differently is told to be realistic. This creates a world where unconscious living is praised, and awareness is uncomfortable. When everyone around you is asleep, sleep feels normal. Awakening from autopilot is not pleasant. It begins with discomfort, with restlessness, with a quiet realization that something is wrong, even if you cannot explain what it is. Distractions stop working. Achievements stop feeling rewarding. Silence becomes louder than noise. This stage is dangerous because many people run back to autopilot to escape the discomfort. But for those who stay with it, awareness begins to grow. Awareness changes how you experience life. You start noticing patterns in your behavior. You question why you react the way you do. You become curious about your thoughts instead of believing them automatically. You realize that many of your choices were never choices at all, they were inherited defaults. This realization can feel overwhelming, but it is also liberating. Because what was learned can be unlearned. Leaving autopilot does not mean abandoning responsibilities or escaping society. It means reclaiming control over your attention. It means choosing how you spend your time instead of letting it disappear. It means aligning your actions with your values, not just with expectations. Conscious living is slower, but deeper. Harder, but honest. It demands presence, discipline, and courage, things autopilot never asks for. Most people never leave autopilot because awareness demands responsibility. Once you see clearly, you can no longer pretend. You must take ownership of your life, your choices, and your direction. That responsibility is heavy, but it is also the foundation of freedom. Freedom is not comfort. Freedom is clarity. Autopilot is not evil, and it is not a failure. It is a survival mode. But survival is not the same as living. You are not meant to simply pass time, pay bills, and grow old without ever knowing yourself. Life becomes meaningful the moment you step out of automatic living and into conscious participation. In the end, autopilot is not a locked cage. It is an open door you never noticed. Awareness is the act of turning around and seeing it. Once you do, life slows down, not because time changes, but because you are finally present inside it. And from that moment on, life no longer happens to you, you happen to life. And once a person truly steps out of autopilot, they begin to notice how rare presence actually is. They see how often people speak without listening, move without thinking, and live without feeling. Conversations become repetitive, days feel scripted, and reactions appear automatic. It becomes clear that most people are not choosing their lives, they are inheriting them. They are following emotional habits passed down by family, cultural expectations reinforced by society, and mental shortcuts created by exhaustion. With awareness comes another difficult realization. Much of what you believed was you was never really you. Your opinions, your fears, your ambitions. Many of them were absorbed, not discovered. Autopilot builds identity from imitation. It teaches you to want what is celebrated, fear what is criticized, and avoid what is unfamiliar. Breaking free means facing the uncomfortable question of who you are without external influence. This is why awakening feels destabilizing. When autopilot shuts off, silence appears, and silence demands honesty. At this stage, many people feel lost. Without routines to hide behind, they feel uncertain. Without constant noise, they feel exposed. Autopilot once protected them from these feelings. Now, they must learn to sit with them. This phase is often mistaken for failure or depression, but it is neither. It is transition. It is the space between unconscious living and intentional existence. Most people turn back here because building awareness requires patience, and patience is something autopilot never trained them for. As awareness deepens, time begins to feel different. Moments feel longer. Choices feel heavier. You begin to notice how often you used to say yes without thinking, agree without believing, and continue without questioning. Now, each decision demands presence. This can feel exhausting at first, but slowly it becomes empowering. You realize that energy was never lacking, it was just being spent unconsciously. You also begin to see how autopilot benefits the world around you more than it benefits you. Systems run smoothly when people do not question them. Relationships stay predictable when emotions are suppressed. Workflows remain efficient when creativity is limited. Autopilot keeps everything stable, but stability is not the same as growth. Growth requires disruption, reflection, and risk. These are the things autopilot avoids at all costs. Another subtle change happens during awakening. Your tolerance for meaningless activity drops. Small talk feels empty. Endless scrolling feels draining. Performing for approval feels pointless. This does not mean you become superior. It means you become selective. You begin protecting your attention because you finally understand its value. Attention is life. Where it goes, your life follows. With this realization comes responsibility. You can no longer blame time, luck, or circumstances for everything. You see your role in your own stagnation, and that can be painful. But it is also the moment your power returns. Responsibility is not punishment. It is permission. Permission to change, to redesign, to choose again, consciously this time. Living without autopilot does not mean constant productivity or non-stop growth. It means presence. It means knowing why you are doing what you are doing. It means aligning your actions with your values, even when it is uncomfortable. Conscious living is slower, but it is real. And reality, even when difficult, feels lighter than unconscious repetition. Most people will never make this shift, not because they are incapable, but because autopilot is comfortable. It asks nothing and promises nothing. Awareness asks everything, but gives meaning in return. That is the trade most people avoid. In the end, autopilot is not the enemy. It is a default setting. But you were never meant to live on default forever. Life begins the moment you take control of your attention, your choices, and your direction. And once you do, you realize that freedom was never something you needed to find, it was something you needed to stop giving away. If this message made you uncomfortable, that is not a bad sign. Discomfort is often the first signal of awareness. Living on autopilot feels safe, but safety is not the same as living. You were never meant to spend your entire life repeating routines, suppressing questions, and waiting for a moment that never comes. Awareness is not loud, and it is not dramatic. It begins quietly, the moment you decide to pay attention to your thoughts, your time, and your choices. And once that awareness begins, there is no true way back. Because a life lived consciously may be harder, slower, and more demanding, but it is real. And a real life, even with uncertainty, is always better than a comfortable one lived on autopilot.